At 7:30 a.m. on June 6, 1944, Private Vinton Dove crouched behind the steel flank of an armored bulldozer on Omaha Beach, watching the 5th Assault Wave disintegrate under German fire. He was 24 years old. He had 2 months of bulldozer training. He had 0 combat experience. Ahead of him, the German 352nd Infantry Division controlled exit Easy 1 with ruthless precision. 17 machine gun nests. 4 anti-tank guns. Mortar crews firing on pre-registered coordinates that turned the beach into a killing ground. Nearly 4,000 American soldiers were pinned behind an 8-foot wall of loose stone, unable to advance, unable to retreat, unable to survive where they lay. Dove had entered the Army in September 1943, inducted at Fort Myer, Virginia. He was married. No children. Before the war, he worked construction. When the Army needed heavy equipment operators, they trained him on a Caterpillar D8 bulldozer in just 3 weeks, welded armor plates around the cab, and told him he would be clearing obstacles under fire. His commanding officer had been blunt. The survival rate for armored bulldozer operators on D-Day was estimated at less than 20%. The engineers called it a suicide mission. At 0400 hours, Company C, 37th Engineer Combat Battalion, boarded landing craft infantry 553. Dove was crammed into the steel hull with 47 other engineers, mine-clearing specialists, demolition men carrying Bangalore torpedoes, others burdened with metal detectors strapped to their backs. The sea was running 6-foot swells. The craft pitched violently. Men vomited into helmets and boots. At 0715, an 88mm shell punched through the side of LCI 553. The explosion killed 11 engineers instantly. Dove felt the concussion slam through the deck plates as seawater poured through the jagged hull. The craft listed 15 degrees to port. Men scrambled for the ramps as another shell screamed overhead and detonated in the surf 50 yards ahead. At 0728, the ramp dropped. Dove drove his bulldozer straight into neck-deep water. The waterproofed engine coughed, then caught. Spray and smoke blinded him. All he could see was the dark outline of the shingle bank 200 yards inland, machine gun tracers slicing horizontal lines through the gray morning light. Bodies drifted past the blade. The 37th Engineer Battalion would suffer the heaviest casualties of any engineer unit on Omaha Beach. By 0800, 24 men were already dead. The battalion commander was among them. Company A couldn't reach exit Easy 3. Company B was pinned at the waterline. Company C had lost 1/3 of its strength before reaching dry sand. Dove reached the shingle bank at 0742. To his left, Private William Shoemaker, his relief operator, crouched behind a burned-out Sherman tank. German gunners had already identified the bulldozers as priority targets. 2 other operators lay dead. Their machines burned uselessly at the waterline. Behind the shingle bank ran a German anti-tank ditch, 9 feet deep and 12 feet wide, spanning the entire exit. Beyond it stood concrete roadblocks reinforced with railroad rails. Past those, pillboxes and machine gun positions overlapped fields of fire that covered every inch of ground. Behind Dove, 4,000 American infantrymen from the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions hugged the stones. They had no cover. They had no way forward. They had no way off the beach. Every 60 seconds, German mortars slammed into the shingle. Men died in clusters, 3, 4 at a time. The plan had failed completely. Air Force heavy bombers, 480 B-17s and B-24s, had dropped 1,300 tons of bombs that morning. Every bomb missed. Cloud cover forced late release. The bombs landed 3 miles inland. Not a single German fortification was damaged. Naval gunfire was supposed to last 40 minutes. It lasted 15. Most shells fell short or overshot. The German crews climbed back out of their bunkers and resumed firing. 32 duplex drive Sherman tanks were supposed to swim ashore ahead of the infantry. 27 sank in the rough seas. 2 reached shore in Dove sector. Both were destroyed within 12 minutes by German anti-tank guns. The infantry landed alone. Dove understood the math. Nothing moved inland until exit Easy 1 was cleared. Tanks, trucks, artillery, medical vehicles, and the only machine capable of filling the ditch, breaching the shingle, and ripping apart the roadblocks was a bulldozer. German fire hammered the blade as Dove advanced. Bullets sparked off the steel in continuous streams. He couldn't raise the blade without exposing himself. He couldn't lower it without losing all visibility. So he drove blind. At 0800, the blade struck the shingle. The bulldozer bucked violently. The track spun. The engine screamed. Stones the size of grapefruits cascaded over the hood. Then the tracks bit. The machine lurched forward 5 feet. The first gap through the shingle bank in his sector. Every German gun within 400 yards immediately shifted onto him. Mortar rounds began walking in. Dove counted the explosions. 3, 4, 5. The observers were adjusting fire. He had seconds, not minutes. He reversed 10 feet. Angled the blade left. Drove forward again. The blade cut into the shingle at a 45-degree angle. The gap widened to 12 feet. Wide enough for a Jeep. Not wide enough for a truck. Not wide enough for a tank. Shrapnel rang against the armor. And Vinton Dove kept pushing. Dove felt the concussion through the seat. A mortar round had landed 15 feet behind the bulldozer. He kept the throttle pinned wide open. The engine temperature needle climbed past safe limits, edging into the red. The waterproofing seals around the exhaust stacks were failing. Salt water had already begun corroding the connections. The engine would overheat soon. Across the open sand, Private William Shoemaker sprinted toward the bulldozer. He zigzagged through mortar impacts, machine gun fire kicking sand around his boots. He reached the machine and slapped the armor plating twice. The signal. Time to switch operators. Dove climbed out of the cab as Shoemaker climbed in. The exchange took 8 seconds. German snipers did not fire. They wanted the bulldozer alive. A destroyed bulldozer meant no gap. No gap meant Americans trapped. Trapped Americans meant easy targets. Dove crouched behind a concrete tetrahedron obstacle. His hands shook uncontrollably. His ears rang from the engine noise and constant explosions. He checked his watch. 0817 hours. He had been operating the bulldozer for 49 minutes. It felt like 6 hours. Shoemaker drove forward into the gap and widened it another 8 feet. Then he reversed, repositioned, and attacked the shingle from a new angle. The technique worked. Cut from multiple directions, turn a vertical wall into a ramp. Make it climbable. At 0832, an 88mm shell screamed overhead and detonated in the water behind the bulldozer. The German anti-tank gunners were ranging in. Behind Dove, soldiers from the 16th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division, tried to organize. A captain with a bleeding shoulder wound gathered 15 men. They had one Bangalore torpedo left. He pointed toward the wire obstacles protecting the draw leading to exit Easy 1. 3 men grabbed the Bangalore and ran forward. German machine gun fire cut all 3 down before they covered 20 yards. The Bangalore lay in the sand, 15 feet short of the wire. The captain slumped against the shingle. 11 of his 15 men were casualties. He had no way forward, no way off the beach, and the tide was rising. Every 10 minutes, the water advanced 6 inches. Landing craft kept arriving. More men, more equipment, more vehicles, stacking up on a beach with no exits. Bodies floated in the surf. Destroyed equipment blocked movement. German artillery had the range dialed in. Every incoming wave took losses before reaching shore. Dove watched Shoemaker work. The gap was now 30 feet wide enough for trucks, maybe even tanks at the right angle. But the anti-tank ditch remained. That ditch was the real problem. 9 feet deep. 12 feet wide, running the entire length of the exit road. Shoemaker drove the bulldozer forward until the blade tipped into the ditch. He pushed down, reversed, lifted a blade full of sand, stone, and debris, then dumped it back into the trench. One load, maybe 3 cubic yards. The ditch needed hundreds. This would take hours, and the Germans knew it. At 0847, a burst of machine gun fire stitched across the bulldozer's right track. Bullets punched through the housing. The track sheared apart. The bulldozer lurched violently to the right. The engine stalled. Shoemaker hit the starter. The engine cranked, but didn't catch. He pumped the throttle and tried again. Nothing. The bulldozer sat dead, half in the ditch, half out, blocking the gap they had just carved under fire. Forward observers had already called in fresh mortar coordinates. Dove understood the choice in front of him. Stay behind cover and survive another hour, until the rising tide forced everyone into the open. or run 100 yards across open sand under machine gun and mortar fire to reach a broken bulldozer that might never restart. A bulldozer every German gunner within 400 yards was already watching. 5 miles offshore, General Omar Bradley stood on the bridge of the cruiser USS Augusta. Through binoculars, he saw smoke, fires, wrecked landing craft, and thousands of men pinned against the shingle with nowhere to go. He turned to his operations officer. "Omaha is failing." Bradley considered pulling the force off the beach entirely, redirecting survivors to Utah or the British sectors. Then he raised his binoculars again. Near Exit Easy 1, he saw something different. A gap in the shingle, a bulldozer, and a single man running toward it through machine gun fire. Dove ran. Tracers sliced through the air 2 feet above his head. A mortar detonated to his left. Shrapnel whipped past his helmet. He didn't stop. 50 yards. 60. His boots slipped in the wet sand. He stumbled, recovered, and kept moving. At 0853, he reached the bulldozer. Shoemaker was still cranking the starter. The engine turned but wouldn't fire. Dove climbed onto the track housing and ripped open the air intake. Salt water poured out. He pulled the filter free. The engine coughed. Caught. Died. The waterproofing had failed. Fuel was contaminated. A machine gun burst raked the blade. One round punched through the cab roof 6 inches from Shoemaker's head. He ducked, but kept cranking. Dove jumped down and examined the track. 3 links were sheared completely. Under normal conditions, it was a 2-hour repair. For men, proper tools, a maintenance tent. They had none of that. They had a broken bulldozer in an anti-tank ditch under direct fire, and 4,000 men trapped behind it. Behind them, the situation worsened by the minute. The tide advanced 6 inches every 10 minutes. Landing craft carrying the 18th Infantry Regiment circled offshore, unable to land. Beach obstacles remained intact. The exits stayed blocked. Men and equipment piled up between the shingle bank and the rising water, trapped in a narrowing strip of death. At 0900 hours, the U.S. Navy made a decision no doctrine allowed. Destroyers moved in. USS Carmack, USS Doyle, USS McCook. They crept so close to shore that their keels scraped sand. The ships aligned parallel to Omaha Beach and opened fire with 5-inch guns at point-blank range. It was direct fire, flat trajectory, naval artillery used like giant rifles. Concrete pillboxes cracked apart. Machine gun nests disintegrated. German positions that had survived air and naval bombardment for hours were smashed open in seconds. Dove didn't hesitate. He grabbed a crowbar from the bulldozer's toolbox and wedged it under the broken track. He levered with everything he had. 6 inches. He reset the bar. Levered again. 8 more inches. Enough. Shoemaker hit the starter. The engine cranked. Coughed. Caught. Thick black smoke poured from the exhaust. The governor malfunctioned. The RPM surged, dropped, surged again, but the engine stayed alive. Shoemaker engaged the left track. The bulldozer pivoted right. He engaged both tracks. The broken track scraped and clanked, but it held. The bulldozer clawed its way out of the anti-tank ditch. The blade rose. They had control again. At 0914, they resumed filling the ditch. Blade load after blade load. Sand. Stones. Shattered concrete. Chunks of destroyed landing craft. The ditch was 9 feet deep. Each blade load filled maybe 6 inches. They needed 70 more loads. German artillery found them again. 105mm howitzers, firing from 2 miles inland. The shells came in salvos of 3. The rounds crept closer with terrifying precision. 100 yards behind the dozer. 80 yards. 60. Dove and Shoemaker worked in 20-minute shifts, one operating, one guiding. They switched without stopping the engine. Navy destroyers continued firing. German machine gun fire faded as nests were silenced, but the artillery never stopped. At 0942, a 105mm shell detonated 30 feet from the bulldozer. The blast wave flipped the blade upward. The dozer reared back on its tracks. Shoemaker fought the controls as the machine teetered. The tracks bit. The blade slammed down. The engine sputtered, but kept running. Red hydraulic fluid poured down the right side. The blade response slowed, then worsened. Engineers from Company B, 37th Engineer Combat Battalion reached the exit. Lieutenant Robert Ross took one look and understood. If this exit opened, Omaha survived. If it failed, for divisions would remain trapped on a 6-mile killing ground. Ross organized his men. They blew gaps in wire obstacles, cleared mines by hand, destroyed concrete roadblocks with satchel charges. German snipers targeted them immediately. 3 engineers went down. Ross didn't stop. By 1,000 hours, the anti-tank ditch was half filled. A Sherman tank might cross it at the right angle. Maybe. Dove climbed back into the cab. The engine temperature was critical. The hydraulics were failing. The right track slipped. The bulldozer was dying. He dropped the blade for another load. The hydraulic cylinder groaned. The blade descended 6 inches, then stopped. He tried again. The blade shuddered, dropped another foot, and locked in place. Hydraulic pressure was gone. The right side cylinder had failed completely. The bulldozer was finished. They had carved the shingle bank and filled half the ditch, but they could go no further. Then help arrived. Company C, 149th Engineer Combat Battalion, had landed at Exit Easy 1 by mistake. They brought 2 operational bulldozers. Those machines took over where Dove and Shoemaker left off. At 10:32, the first Sherman tank crossed the filled ditch and rolled inland towards Saint-Laurent-sur-Mer. Then another. Then trucks. Then jeeps. Then ambulances. Exit Easy 1 became the primary route off Omaha Beach. By noon, 3,000 vehicles had passed through the gap Dove had opened. Dove sat on the disabled bulldozer, watching traffic flow past. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Shoemaker sat beside him. Neither spoke. They had been under fire for 3 hours and 26 minutes. 2 other bulldozer operators were dead. Their commanding officer was dead. 24 engineers from their battalion were dead. At 11:15, an aide from General Omar Bradley found them. Bradley had watched from the USS Augusta. He'd seen the bulldozer, seen the 2 men switching positions under fire. He wanted their names. The aide wrote them down. Private Vinton W. Dove, Private William J. Shoemaker, 37th Engineer Combat Battalion, Company C. Bradley recommended both men for the Medal of Honor. The paperwork would move up the chain, Division, Corps, Army, toward General Eisenhower. But the war didn't pause for citations. At 11:47, German artillery zeroed in on Exit Easy 1. The first salvo landed 50 yards east of the gap, the second 30 yards west. The third hit the road itself. 1 shell detonated on a truck carrying ammunition. The blast killed the driver and 4 soldiers, blocking the exit for 12 minutes until engineers shoved the wreckage aside. German gunners couldn't close the gap, but they could make using it deadly. Dove and Shoemaker moved away from the wrecked bulldozer and rejoined what remained of Company C. Of the 48 engineers who boarded LCI, 5:53 that morning, 31 were still alive. 11 died when the shell punched through the hull. 6 more died on the beach. The survivors went back to work, clearing obstacles, marking mine lanes, dragging wounded men to aid stations. Omaha Beach was no longer failing, because 1 bulldozer didn't stop. By noon, the balance of Omaha Beach had finally shifted. The 37th Engineer Combat Battalion had opened all 3 exits in their sector. Exit Easy 1, Exit Easy 3, and a third gap between them. Engineers from neighboring battalions forced additional exits farther west. For the first time since dawn, Omaha Beach was no longer a sealed killing ground. Vehicles could move inland. Reinforcements could flow forward. The invasion had survived, but the price was catastrophic. By the end of June 6th, V Corps reported 2,300 casualties on Omaha Beach alone. The 1st Infantry Division lost 1,190 men. The 29th Infantry Division lost 743. Engineer units lost 441, many of them killed in the first 3 hours, before a single usable exit existed. Most of the dead never made it past the shingle. Dove kept working. Through the afternoon, he helped recover equipment from wrecked landing craft. He marked mine lanes with white tape. He guided trucks through the narrow, cratered passage at Exit Easy 1. His hands finally stopped shaking around 1,400 hours, when the adrenaline burned out and the exhaustion took over. He didn't stop anyway. At 16:30, General Omar Bradley came ashore. He inspected Exit Easy 1 personally. Lieutenant Colonel John O'Neill, now commanding the battalion after the original commander's death, pointed out the disabled bulldozer. He explained how 2 privates had created the first breach through the shingle and filled half the anti-tank ditch under concentrated machine gun, mortar, and artillery fire. Bradley walked over to the bulldozer. He studied the damage, the shattered track links, the hydraulic failure, the bullet holes punched through the armored cab. He asked where the operators were. O'Neill found them. Dove and Shoemaker stood at attention as Bradley asked their names and home states. Dove said Virginia. Shoemaker said Pennsylvania. Bradley told them he had watched their bulldozer through binoculars from the bridge of the USS Augusta. He said he would never forget it. He said it looked like they were plowing a driveway on a Saturday afternoon back home, not clearing an exit under German machine gun fire while the invasion hung in the balance. Bradley recommended both men for the Medal of Honor. The paperwork moved fast. Division approved it. Corps approved it. First Army approved it. By early July, the recommendation reached Supreme Headquarters, Allied Expeditionary Force. General Dwight D. Eisenhower reviewed it personally. He downgraded both awards to the Distinguished Service Cross. No explanation was given. Some officers believed Eisenhower maintained an informal quota on Medals of Honor. Others believed engineer actions were undervalued because they weren't considered direct combat. The real reason was never recorded. Bradley was reportedly furious. He believed both men had earned the nation's highest decoration. But Eisenhower's decision was final. The award ceremony took place in August 1944. Dove and Shoemaker received their Distinguished Service Crosses from Major General Clarence Hubner. The citation praised their extraordinary heroism, their initiative, and their refusal to quit after the bulldozer was crippled, crediting their actions with opening the principal exit off Omaha Beach. After the ceremony, Dove returned to duty. The 37th Engineers moved inland with the advancing front, building bridges, clearing roads, removing mines, constructing airfields. Normal engineer work. Necessary work. Work that rarely made headlines. Dove was wounded twice more before the war ended. Once in France in September 1944, once in Germany in February 1945. Neither wound was serious enough for evacuation. He survived the war. He went home to Virginia, married his sweetheart, raised children, lived to the age of 83. He almost never spoke about D-Day. His son later said his father's answer was always the same. He wasn't a hero. The heroes were still on the beach. He just did what he was told. He was lucky. The citation said something else. It stated that Private Vinton W. Dove displayed extraordinary heroism in action against an enemy, that his actions were instrumental in opening Exit Easy 1, and that his contribution to the Omaha Beach landing was immeasurable. Today, Dove's Distinguished Service Cross hangs in the U.S. Army Engineer Museum at Fort Leonard Wood. Beside it is his uniform, the same one he wore on June 6, 1944. Salt stains still mark the fabric. The metal is tarnished. The cloth worn thin at the elbows. It tells the story of a 24-year-old bulldozer operator who did impossible work under impossible conditions. Bradley was right. Dove ran that bulldozer as if bombs weren't exploding, as if machine guns weren't firing, as if the fate of the largest amphibious invasion in history didn't hinge on whether he could push through 8 feet of shingle and fill a 9-foot anti-tank ditch while every German weapon on the bluff concentrated fire on his position. Why did Dove succeed when others failed? Training? Personality? Luck? No one ever found a definitive answer. But post-war engineers calculated something unsettling. The German strongpoint covering Exit Easy 1 fired over 20,000 rounds during the landing. The fields of fire were perfect. Visibility was unobstructed. Statistically, both men should have been killed within 20 minutes. They weren't. And because they weren't, Omaha Beach held. The 37th Engineer Battalion remained on the beach for 3 more days, expanding exits, grading roads, reinforcing fill with steel matting, laying pierced steel planking. By June 9th, over 50,000 vehicles had moved inland through the gaps they opened. By June 13th, the entire V Corps supply operation flowed through those exits. Exit Easy 1 carried the heaviest load. Sherman tanks, tank destroyers, artillery, ammunition trucks, ambulances evacuating the wounded. The traffic never stopped, 24 hours a day, under intermittent German artillery fire. German observers never stopped trying to close it. They fired from positions near Saint-Laurent-sur-Mer, 105mm howitzers, 155mm guns, even railway artillery firing from miles inland. They never succeeded. The exit Dove and Shoemaker opened became one of the most important supply arteries of the Normandy invasion. A road carved not by strategy or doctrine, but by two privates, a dying bulldozer, and the refusal to stop. The shells came without rhythm. Sometimes 3 salvos in 10 minutes. Sometimes nothing for 2 hours. The engineers learned the pattern anyway. Listen for the distant boom. Count to 17. Take cover. 17 seconds from firing to impact. Clockwork. Men who survived long enough developed instincts instead of hope. Private Vinton Dove left Omaha Beach on June 10, 1944. The 37th Engineer Combat Battalion moved inland to support the advance toward Corentin and the Norman hedgerows. Their new mission was road clearance. The Germans had turned every intersection into a trap, felled trees, demolished bridges, cratered roads, mines buried along verges and culverts. The engineers worked ahead of the infantry, clearing paths, marking safe routes, opening arteries through wreckage and death. It was still dangerous, but different. On the beach, everything had happened in compressed time. 3 hours of maximum violence. Inland, danger stretched out across weeks. A mine here, a sniper there. Artillery falling without warning. Men died slowly instead of all at once. Dove was wounded the first time on September 14, 1944, near Nancy, France. A German mortar barrage caught his squad while they were clearing a road junction. Shrapnel struck his left leg and right shoulder. The wounds weren't severe. Medics bandaged him and recommended evacuation. Dove refused. He stayed with his unit, limped for 2 weeks until the leg healed, and went back to work. The second wound came on February 9, 1945, near Pforzheim, Germany. Another mortar attack. This time shrapnel struck his back. 3 fragments lodged close to his spine, too dangerous to remove surgically. The doctors left them there. Dove carried those fragments for the rest of his life. Decades later, they would still set off metal detectors in airports. He received a Purple Heart with oak leaf cluster, 2 separate wounds. Some men collected 3 or 4 Purple Hearts. Dove never mentioned his. When asked about medals, he said the Distinguished Service Cross was enough. He didn't need recognition for getting hit. The war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945. The 37th Engineers were near Plzeň, Czechoslovakia. They had advanced more than 700 miles from Omaha Beach, through France, Luxembourg, Belgium, Germany, building bridges, clearing roads, keeping the infantry moving. Dove had enough points to go home. The Army used a system: combat time, overseas service, wounds, decorations. He qualified immediately. Paperwork took 3 months. He stayed in Europe until August, performing occupation duties. On August 23rd, he boarded a transport ship bound for New York. 14 days at sea. On September 6, 1945, exactly 15 months after D-Day, the ship docked at Staten Island. Dove processed through Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, received his discharge papers, and took a train south. His wife met him at the station in Virginia. They had been married 2 years. Spent only 6 months together before he shipped overseas. She had written him 212 letters during the war. He had written back 97 times. Now the war was over. No more letters were needed. They settled outside Richmond. Dove returned to construction work. Heavy equipment. Bulldozers, mostly. He was good at it. Steady, methodical, reliable. He worked for the same company for 38 years, retired in 1983, raised 3 children, lived quietly. He never joined veterans organizations. Never attended reunions. Never marched in parades. His son later said the Distinguished Service Cross stayed in a drawer. Never displayed. When people asked about the war, Dove changed the subject. Said it was a long time ago. Said other men did more. In 1994, the 50th anniversary of D-Day brought renewed attention. Veterans were asked to speak. Historians wanted interviews. Journalists called. Dove declined every request. He was 74. He said the beach had been full of heroes. He wasn't one of them. He just ran a bulldozer. Eventually, his family convinced him to donate his uniform and medal to the U.S. Army Engineer Museum at Fort Leonard Wood. The ceremony took place in September 2003. Dove was 83, frail, but he made the trip. The museum director called it the most important D-Day artifact in the collection. Dove said very little. His son spoke instead. Said his father never believed he was special. Never sought recognition. just a soldier doing his job under impossible circumstances. The museum director said something different. He said Dove's actions on June 6, 1944 were the difference between success and failure at Omaha Beach. That without the gap through the shingle, the landing might have collapsed. That General Bradley was seriously considering evacuation. That the exit Dove opened changed everything. Dove died 3 months later, December 19, 2003. Heart failure. Age 83. He was buried outside Richmond with full military honors. Flag-draped coffin. 3-volley salute. The Distinguished Service Cross rested beside him, the same medal he had kept in a drawer for 59 years. Today, his uniform remains on permanent display at Fort Leonard Wood. The jacket still bears salt stains. The helmet. The boots caked with Normandy sand. The medal sits in a glass case beside a placard explaining what happened on June 6, 1944. Most visitors stop for 30 seconds. They see the medal. They understand it mattered. But they don't understand the mathematics. For 1,000 men trapped behind an 8-foot shingle bank. No way forward. No way off the beach. A rising tide swallowing space inch by inch. German machine guns with interlocking fire. Mortars already ranged in. The landing was failing. Exit Easy 1 was the key. The only exit that could be opened in time. Exit Easy 3 was under heavier fire. Dog Green was blocked by concrete. Vierville wouldn't open until late afternoon. Everything depended on Easy 1. And Easy 1 depended on one bulldozer. A machine that should have been destroyed in minutes. And a 24-year-old private who refused to let it stop. 16 armored bulldozers were assigned to Omaha Beach. Only 6 reached the sand. 5 were destroyed within the first hour. That left one. Private Vinton Dove's bulldozer, the last operational armored dozer in the eastern sector. If it failed, the gap stayed closed. If the gap stayed closed, the beach remained sealed. If the beach remained sealed, General Omar Bradley would order evacuation. That was not theory. That was a decision already forming offshore. Military historians still debate what saved D-Day. Some point to the paratroopers who sowed chaos inland. Some credit the Navy destroyers that risked grounding themselves to fire point blank. Some highlight small infantry groups that clawed their way up the bluffs. All of those mattered. But without exits, none of them could change the outcome. Without exits, Omaha Beach was a trap, a killing ground with no release valve. Men would continue to land, continue to die, and never move forward. Exit Easy 1 was the fulcrum. And Easy 1 rested on a single bulldozer. Dove never understood why people made such a fuss about it. Years later, in the 1990s, his son asked him what he thought about while operating the bulldozer under fire. Asked what went through his mind as German machine guns fired tens of thousands of rounds at his position. Dove didn't hesitate. He said he thought about blade angle, about track tension, about hydraulic pressure, about not stalling the engine. He didn't think about heroism. He thought about the work. That answer confused his son. How could someone operate a bulldozer for more than 3 hours while German gunners concentrated every weapon on him and not think about danger? Dove explained it simply. Thinking about danger didn't help. Thinking about the job did. Keep the blade at the right angle. Keep moving forward. Don't let the track slip. Basic operator skills. The Army hadn't trained him to be brave. They trained him to operate heavy equipment. And on June 6, 1944, the job was clearing a path through 8 feet of shingle while the enemy tried to kill him. So he did the job. That was the point the Medal of Honor recommendation missed. Bradley's citation spoke of extraordinary heroism, initiative, refusal to quit when the bulldozer broke down. All of it was true, but secondary. Dove wasn't trying to be heroic. He was trying to finish a task. The heroism was incidental. When Dwight D. Eisenhower downgraded the recommendation to the Distinguished Service Cross, rumors followed. Some officers believed engineering work wasn't considered direct combat. Others whispered about quotas. Some thought Eisenhower never fully understood what happened at Exit Easy 1. The official reason was never given. But Omar Bradley never forgot. In his 1951 memoirs, Bradley devoted 2 full paragraphs to Dove. He called him the most remarkable soldier he encountered during the Normandy campaign. He wrote that watching that bulldozer move under fire gave him hope at the exact moment he was preparing to abandon the landing. Bradley used a phrase that stuck. Like a Saturday afternoon back home. He repeated it in speeches. Historians quoted it. Documentary narrators leaned on it. The image was perfect. a man working a bulldozer under fire as if the war didn't exist. That detachment, that professional focus, was Dove's real advantage. Not courage, not recklessness, professional calm. The ability to perform skilled labor while everything around him tried to kill him. The Army noticed. In 1956, the Engineer Corps revised its training manuals. A new section appeared, operating equipment under fire. The primary case study was Private Vinton W. Dove. Recruits were taught the importance of focus, of treating combat like training, of finishing the task regardless of circumstances. The manual stayed in use until 1973. Inside the engineer community, the story became legend. Every bulldozer operator learned it. The private who cleared exit easy one, who kept working when the dozer broke, who opened the gap that saved Omaha Beach. Outside that community, Dove remained almost unknown. No movies, no major biographies, no parades. He lived quietly in Virginia, worked construction, raised his family, kept his medal in a drawer. Every June 6th, he refused to watch anniversary coverage. His wife asked why. He said he didn't need reminding. He remembered everything. The engine noise, the salt air, the smell of diesel, the sight of men dying behind the shingle bank. What he tried not to remember was that 24 men from his battalion died that day. His commanding officer. 11 men from his landing craft. 12 more on the beach. He survived. They didn't. No medal balanced that equation. Sometimes he wondered why the bullets missed him when they hit everyone else. Decades later, someone tried to answer that question with mathematics. In 1987, a researcher at the U.S. Army War College conducted a study on D-Day survival rates, examining exposure time, weapon density, casualty clustering, and equipment losses. When he analyzed the bulldozer operators at Omaha Beach, the data broke his models. 6 bulldozers reached shore. 5 operators were killed within 90 minutes. Average time to death, 37 minutes. Average rounds fired at each position, 8,000 to 12,000. The 6th operator, Dove, survived 3 hours and 26 minutes. Estimated rounds fired at his position, over 20,000. Calculated probability of survival, 0.003%. The researcher rechecked the data, then checked it again. The numbers were correct. German after-action reports confirmed it. The Strong Point defending exit Easy 1 reported expending 23,000 rounds of machine gun ammunition that morning, with a clear, uninterrupted line of sight to the bulldozer. The researcher labeled Dove a statistical anomaly, an outlier that defied modeling. The kind of result that suggests either error or something no equation can explain. But the outcome was undeniable. One bulldozer, one gap, one exit. And because that exit opened, Omaha Beach did not fail. Not because a man tried to be a hero, but because he focused on the work in front of him and refused to stop. On June 6, 1944, that was enough to change history. They had done everything right. German gunners concentrated their fire, adjusted for range and wind, used tracer rounds to walk bullets onto the target. It was textbook procedure for engaging armored vehicles. And yet both operators lived. Private Vinton Dove took no wounds during the beach operation. Private William Shoemaker suffered only superficial shrapnel in his left hand. Nothing combat effective. Both men kept working. The bulldozer did not fare as well. A separated track. Failed hydraulics. Bullet holes stitched across the cab roof and blade. The machine absorbed the punishment meant for the men inside. Decades later, in 1988, a military researcher interviewed Dove as part of a War College study on survival rates at Omaha Beach. He asked careful, methodical questions. Did you take cover often? Did you alter your position between salvos? Did you time your movements between bursts? Dove listened patiently, then said something unexpected. He didn't remember taking cover at all. He remembered working the controls, switching positions with Shoemaker, repairing the track with a crowbar. But he didn't remember ducking, didn't remember hiding. Didn't remember fear, not until after the work was finished. The researcher pressed harder. What about near misses? Bullets striking close? Shrapnel impacts? Dove said he heard bullets constantly, pinging off the blade, punching through the cab, but he couldn't recall any that came close to hitting him personally. He was either behind armor or moving between positions. The timing, he said, just worked out. That answer didn't satisfy the data. The researcher concluded his study with an unusual admission. He wrote that Dove's survival could not be explained by tactical skill. It could not be explained by random chance. It could not be explained by poor enemy marksmanship. The German gunners were experienced. The weapons functioned properly. The range was optimal. Something else had intervened. Something outside the normal parameters of combat analysis. The study was filed, archived, forgotten. Few people ever read it. Fewer still cited it. But it established one fact that no one could dispute. What happened at Exit Easy 1 on June 6, 1944 defied mathematical probability. It defied tactical modeling. It defied reasonable explanation. Dove never knew the study existed. By then, the war was far behind him. He had grandchildren, a garden, a routine, Monday groceries, Wednesday church, Friday family dinners. The beach belonged to history. He belonged to the present. But history never fully let him go. Every June 6th, the phone rang. Reporters, historians, documentary producers. He declined politely, said he had nothing new to add, said other men were more interesting. Eventually, he stopped answering the phone on that date altogether. One day, his youngest grandchild, 7 years old, asked him about the war. She had learned about D-Day in school. "Were you there, Grandpa?" "Yes." "What did you do?" "I drove a bulldozer." "Was it scary?" "Parts of it." "Were you a hero?" "No. The real heroes didn't come home." That answer troubled his daughter. She pulled him aside later, told him he was being unfair to himself, reminded him of the medal, of Bradley's words, of the lives saved. Dove shook his head. Pride wasn't the issue. Truth was, 24 men from his battalion died. He didn't. That wasn't heroism. That was luck. She didn't argue. She'd heard the same response her entire life. Privately, she wondered if it was something deeper, survivor's guilt. The kind that keeps men from accepting praise. The kind that redirects honor toward the dead. The kind that never fully heals. Dove never spoke of it. Never named the men who died. Never told stories. When pressed, he said the past was past. Talking didn't bring anyone back. But sometimes, late at night, his wife found him sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. When she asked what he was thinking about, he said, "Nothing important." She knew better. His mind always went back to the same place. The shingle bank. The bulldozer. The unanswered question. Why did the bullets miss him when they hit everyone else? No explanation ever fit. The chaplain said divine providence. Officers said tactical luck. Fellow soldiers said fate. Dove said he didn't know. The Germans had fired thousands of rounds. They had clear shots. They were trained professionals. And yet none of it stopped him. In the end, only one explanation made sense, though no one liked saying it out loud. Sometimes soldiers survive because the mission requires them to survive. Because thousands of men trapped on a beach need someone to open an exit. And that someone happened to be a 24-year-old private from Virginia who knew how to operate a bulldozer. The official history of the 37th Engineer Combat Battalion mentions Dove in 3 short paragraphs. It says he cleared the first gap through the shingle at Exit Easy 1. It says he worked under continuous fire. It says he received the Distinguished Service Cross. That's all. But behind those lines is the truth history rarely captures. On the morning Omaha Beach nearly failed, one man focused on blade angle, track tension, and hydraulic pressure, and because he did, an invasion lived. Not because he tried to be brave, but because he did the work. Official after-action reports from Company C, 37th Engineer Combat Battalion, described the opening of Exit Easy 1 in neutral, technical language. The documents list times, equipment status, casualties, and task completion. They identify the actions taken, the sequence of events, and the outcome. There is no commentary on individual importance beyond award citations. The tone is clinical and procedural. However, Lieutenant Colonel John O'Neill, who assumed command after the battalion commander was killed, recorded a different assessment in his personal diary. O'Neill wrote that the actions of Private Vinton W. Dove, assisted by Private William J. Shoemaker, constituted the single most decisive individual contribution on Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944. He stated that without the opening of Exit Easy 1, the eastern sector of Omaha Beach would have collapsed. He further noted that General Bradley was prepared to order evacuation and that failure at Omaha would have jeopardized the Normandy invasion as a whole. The diary was not published during O'Neill's lifetime. It remained in family possession until 2009, when it was donated to the National Archives by his grandson. Military historians reviewed the entry and cross-referenced it with operational logs, naval gunfire reports, engineer timelines, casualty records, and Bradley's command communications. The assessment was consistent with documented facts. Exit Easy 1 was confirmed as the first viable armored exit opened in the eastern sector and the primary route that allowed sustained vehicle movement off Omaha Beach. The physical geography has since changed. The shingle bank no longer exists. The anti-tank ditch has been filled. German fortifications have been removed or collapsed. Exit Easy 1 is now a paved road leading inland towards Saint-Laurent-sur-Mer. It is used daily by civilian traffic. There is no indication to most visitors that the road passes through the location where a bulldozer operated under direct fire for over 3 hours to create the initial breach. A memorial near the exit commemorates the 37th Engineer Combat Battalion and lists the names of the 24 engineers killed on June 6, 1944. Dove's name does not appear, as the memorial records only the dead. In 2004, during the 60th anniversary commemorations, an additional plaque was installed. It reads, "This exit was opened under fire by Private Vinton W. Dove and Private William J. Shoemaker. Their actions saved thousands of lives." William J. Shoemaker died in 1998 at age 76 from a heart attack. He remained in the Army after World War II, achieved the rank of sergeant, served 2 tours in Korea, and retired in 1963. He lived in Pennsylvania and rarely spoke about D-Day. He and Dove exchanged Christmas cards for approximately 50 years. They did not visit or call each other. The correspondence consisted of brief messages acknowledging a shared experience. The Engineer Museum at Fort Leonard Wood expanded its D-Day exhibit in 2014. Dove's uniform remained the central artifact. A new item was added, a section of an armored bulldozer blade recovered from Omaha Beach during a salvage operation in 2002. The metal is corroded and visibly marked by bullet impacts. At the exhibit opening, the museum director stated that the blade represented the role of technical labor under combat conditions and the contribution of soldiers whose primary task was not combat, but execution of essential work under fire. Dove had died in 2003 and did not comment on the exhibit. During his lifetime, he consistently rejected personal recognition and redirected attention to those killed during the landing. Following his death, the museum presented the record without qualification. The display identifies the facts. 1 armored bulldozer remained operational in the eastern sector. Exit Easy 1 was opened under sustained fire. Approximately 20,000 rounds were fired at the position. The operator survived without beach phase wounds. Vehicle traffic off Omaha Beach began shortly thereafter. The exhibit concludes with a factual summary. On June 6, 1944, a private from Virginia operated a bulldozer under direct enemy fire and opened the first functional exit off Omaha Beach. The action enabled the movement of armor, logistics, and reinforcements. The operation met all criteria for mission success.